Hey, can you hear me?
I hear.
You're breaking up just a little bit. Nope, can't hear you.
Oh.
I got part of one word. Nope, one word came through and then it stopped. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can. It's trying to come through for you. It's almost like you have a loose connection or something. Okay, that was a little bit better. I heard. That was it. I heard the word that. It's like watching one of those movies where the person is on the other line. Can you hear me now? Sort of thing. Yeah. No, I can't hear you. Yaz suggests that you try refreshing the page.
Can you hear me now?
What about now?
Can you hear anything at all?
I can hear you fine. Whatever you did, it fixed it.
So you can hear me fine now?
Yep, perfectly. Am I audible for you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. My name's Chaz.
My name's Justin.
Hi, Justin. I'll start then, as the timer is counting down. Okay. I'm going to tell you talk first about what I'm not going to address, and I'm going to explain what my proposition actually means. So I'm not going to address Trump's misogyny. I'm not going to address his possible racism or his alleged anti-Semitism. I'm not going to address his opinion on global warming. I'm not going to address his bromance with Putin or any of the Russian debacle currently. I'm not going to address his encouragement of anti-vaxxers. I'm not going to discuss his wall or his immigration ban. I'm not going to bring up his pussy grabbing. I'm not going to claim that he mocked a disabled reporter, because he didn't. There are even a few things that I admire about Trump. For instance, I've decided, much to my surprise, that his proposed Choices in Education Act of 2017 might not be a bad idea. I don't need to discuss or review any of those things to support my proposition. Trump disqualifies himself as POTUS every time he opens his mouth without any of those things. But first, definitions. What do I mean by my proposition? Do I mean it literally? What do I mean by the word disqualifies? No, I don't mean it literally. That's why I use the qualifier virtually. Almost a caveat. Trump opens his mouth when he orders coffee at a restaurant, and he probably doesn't say anything embarrassing when doing so, at least not very often. Notice that word, embarrassing. That's the focus here. I'm not concerned with what Trump might say in his private life, in his mundane interactions, but only in his public utterances, tweets included, maybe especially tweets. Now, what do I mean by the word disqualifies? Well, that's easy. In Trump's case, I'm referring to activities or offenses that make him unsuitable or unfit for office. Of course, I can't declare someone unfit for something without first defining what roles they are unfit for. So, what exactly are Trump's roles as POTUS? Trump is the chief of state. He's the chief executive. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the chief diplomat and the chief legislator and a couple of other things. The role that's important for the purposes of this debate is Trump's role as chief of state, and sometimes also known as the chief citizen. Every nation has one. The person who serves as the symbolic leader of the country, the person who represents us all of us U.S. citizens anyway, he represents the nation in the United States. The president both leads the government and acts as the chief of state. And again, that's my representative. Almost finished with my little beginning spiel here. In his role as chief of state, as chief citizen, Trump fails. And in his failure, Trump disqualifies himself. I was born during the second term of the 34th president of the United States. Yes, sadly, I'm really that old. Dwight Eisenhower. I don't remember him, nor do I remember his successor, John F. Kennedy. However, I do remember Kennedy's successor, Lyndon Baines Johnson, just as I remember every subsequent president, all the way up to our current president, our 45th, Donald Trump. Out of the 10 presidents whom I remember, only Trump has embarrassed me. Maybe I was too young to be embarrassed by Johnson, and maybe Reagan should have embarrassed me, but the fact remains, only Trump has managed it. Maybe the importance of that role isn't fully appreciated unless or until you are a U.S. citizen who's lived abroad. I've lived abroad as an adult for a total of 19 years. And in all of that time, only Trump has embarrassed me. That isn't a praiseworthy milestone. But I'm now passing the mic to you.
Okay. Am I coming through good still?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay, yep. Good. Well, I guess, unfortunately, I didn't really have all your definitions and what you were kind of going to actually talk about until now. So what I was originally going to kind of defend against is kind of something different in a sense. I'm not really sure how how you address Trump disqualifies himself as POTUS, and then just break it down to just his citizen state status, like you're saying. I'm not sure how that really.
It's one of his roles.
Even I'm not really sure what you're saying. Well, no, I get that. I get that, but I'm not sure exactly because it almost seems like you're kind of equating like the embarrassment you feel from the way he acts in general as a citizen is embarrassing, and that's kind of the disqualification of him. And at that point, I don't even really know what this disqualified even means, because the way I was thinking about it, this qualifications for president, there's essentially 3 qualifications down in the Constitution. 14 years, you got to be a resident for 14 years. But at this point, anyways, he's already became the president. I guess it could be shown that he's not qualified to be the president. But those are only qualifications are 14 years as a resident, 35 years old, and a natural-born citizen. There simply are no more qualifications for the role of the president itself. Anyways, there just aren't. There's no list of things you need to know, or be or say. I mean, technically, you could have probably some form of mental retardation and still be the president if you're elected in.
Absolutely.
I mean, technically, according to right, but. So on that level, that's essentially what I was almost disagreeing in the beginning part. I'm not sure exactly what your position fully is. You're probably gonna have to extrapolate more on it. But I wasn't sure if you're gonna maybe go after the purpose of impeachment and obviously committing crimes and the court process of the federal government essentially through the House and the Senate of the impeachment. But the way you wrote it as qualifications, I was thinking a disqualification essentially can only happen, on the things that are actually qualifiers of the presidency. It seems like you're almost talking about his the feelings you have, like you're embarrassed by him, disqualifies him. I mean, I don't understand really what that means. You mean that means he could be taken out of his presidency, or it just it disqualifies him, meaning he has no standing anymore. He can't be taken seriously in that sense.
Well, I mean, do you want me to answer or?
Yeah, if you don't mind, sure.
Well, let me say first of all, I've been in exactly your position. I had prepared for a debate on which my understanding of the topic was significantly different than the understanding of my opponent. So it was pretty hard to proceed. And I think, to be honest, and I'm going to suggest this to Yaz, who will eventually watch this, that we have an abstract, it would be nice if we could provide a little summary so that our opponent had a heads up, because it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, obviously my proposition was clear to me, but I wrote it, so of course it would be clear to me. But no, I don't think that there's any grounds for impeachment. I know that he legally qualified for the presidency, or he wouldn't be president. I think that he's unfit for his office. He's disqualified in that sense. I'm not suggesting. I'm not suggesting he's being impeached or anything like that.
Okay. See, the way I think though is almost like you're saying that he obviously he's an embarrassment, and compared to other people who has had his role, he's it's kind of makes a joke. It's silly. In that kind of sense, he's disqualified. I think I would almost agree with you entirely on those senses, but I was looking at a point of he disqualifies himself as in he's legally unfit to be president, where he could be legally removed and shouldn't be in that position. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I personally, I don't support Trump. I think he's a joke. Myself,
okay, then we're agreement. I think he's the big horse's ass possibly that we've ever had. I mean, I'm not a historian. Maybe Andrew Jackson. I've read some argument that Andrew Jackson might have been as big of an ass. So, do you mind if we continue anyway?
Yeah, we can discuss stuff, and
so it can become a discussion.
We can discuss how much we don't like Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, but I wasn't essentially defending the position of Trump, or who, especially his personal beliefs and opinions and stuff, but and his policies or any of that. Just my attempt was to essentially defend against whether he's qualified still at this point with what he's done.
I understand.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he did disqualify himself in a legal term.
Gosh, I'm hoping so. Except for I'm not sure that I would prefer Pence. I really don't know. I don't know very much about Mike, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an atheist, so I certainly don't like any of the
I'm
the Christian agendas
I'm an
or religious
atheist. I'm an
agendas.
atheist too, and I was a little bit puzzled because originally you had a different handle, a different nickname for for this debate. So, but I went to your
Right.
Facebook page, and some of the things that you addressed on your Facebook page were things that are typically addressed on the pages of a fundamentalist Christian's webpage. Nothing shouted atheist to me. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'm guessing all you've really seen was the abortion-related stuff,
Exactly.
essentially.
I mean,
right.
I still.
That's something I've actually discussed a lot lately. I'm sorry.
Hold on, that's okay. You continue. I've said enough. Go for it.
Okay, that's something I've actually discussed a lot lately, anyways. Just because I find it kind of compelling it's surprising to me that it has become a religious issue, or you kind of associated, the whole pro-life, pro-choice position as a religious issue. I do get a lot of religious people who take the pro-life stance, but I don't really see how it is a religious issue. I mean, I see tons of, obviously, atheists generally support pro-choice, and religious people generally support pro-life.
Right.
I mean, I'm certainly, I have no belief, never been convinced in the existence of a God, so I certainly don't believe in a God. But I don't hold to any certain tenets of those beliefs. And I wouldn't really call myself a pro-life person or pro-choice. That's something I'd like to talk about and debate and learn more about myself. Because I'm compelled to say, I feel that there's a lot of hypocrisy in the whole concept of murder and against the killing and in general of people.
Well, that's a
because when we allow it, like for the state, we allow it with the state, we allow it with cops. In some cases, we allow it with children and at certain ages of development, knowing certainly it's going to become, and we call it a baby when you're pregnant. Even if you don't have a bump and you're just pregnant, you go, oh, I'm going to have a baby pretty soon.
That's something
we think of that as obviously the child's going to be.
That's something that I would be interested in a more formal way in debating with you. I've known a few atheists.
But that's why you saw the...
Mm-hmm. That's why I made the assumption, because 90% of the time that's argued on someone's webpage, it's because they're, for religious beliefs. I've lost your video. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
No problem.
I can also see your video still.
Okay, no problem. This has happened to me before where the video was phased out. I'm going to proceed. Here, my wife just walked into the room. I'm going to proceed as, and it's not going to be obviously a debate any longer, but I will share what I would have shared had it been a debate, and you can concur or disagree or whatever. So November 4th, 2016, Obama's at a podium during an election rally for Hillary Clinton when a Trump supporter, an elderly veteran, causes the disturbance. How did Trump report it versus how it actually happened? All right. So Trump says you have to go back and look and study and see what happened. And he's referring to the video of the incident. So Trump implies not only that he's watched the video of the incident, but that he's looked at it in some depth, that he's studied it. So in the video, first of all, Trump says to the crowd, hold up, it's okay. Hey, hold on, hold up. You've got an older gentleman who's supporting his candidate. He's not doing nothing. You don't have to worry about him. We live in a country that respects free speech. So second of all, it looks like maybe he might have served in our military, and we got to respect that. Third of all, he was elderly, and we got to respect our elders. And fourth of all, don't boo, vote, because people were booing. Trump reports it as this, and this is direct quote. There was a protester that likes us. he was talking to the protester, referring to Obama, screaming at him, really screaming at him. No, he wasn't. He was raising his voice, but to the crowd, not to the protester. If I spoke the way Obama spoke to that protester, they'd say I'd become unhinged. And he spent so much time screaming at this protester, frankly, it was a disgrace. But then how does he talk about his own protesters? So a couple of quotes. He reports that his security guards said to him, Mr. Trump, there may be somebody with tomatoes in the audience. So Trump says, if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously, I'll pay for the legal fees, I promise. And at another rally, speaking of another protester, he says, do you know what they used to do to guys like that? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. He's walking out with big high fives, smiling, laughing. I'd like to punch him in the face, I tell you. So, I mean, Trump is a sack of shit, to be polite about it. I mean, that's about as polite as I can be, you know. So he lies about Obama's compassionate response to a protester, and then has no compassion for protesters at all. The leader, the now leader of the free world, advocates violence against protesters? Really? And, you know, over to you.
That's one thing that's kind of, you know, what's so untypical about the situation is all those, you know, the basic qualities you usually kind of attribute to the president is because, you know, they got to be kind of the perfect spokesman in a lot of situations. And we kind of saw it as being a strange opportunity to be able to pick at George Bush in a sense, especially towards the end of his, you know, I want to say career almost, but, you know, at the end of his presidency, people started hating him a lot more, it seems, and he was, you know, easier to pick at, and he, you know, Trump is, it's really fun for people, and it's different, and it's really, you know, it actually means something to your life in a lot of cases, so people get worried. And, you know, I think Trump is, you know, sometimes it's overplayed because, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that you're going to attack him for everything, which is sometimes good. But the one bad thing I think about attacking him for every little stupid thing, like I had seen on the news, that he gets his steak well done with ketchup. And,
yes,
like,
agreed.
That was news. I can't believe that. But the stuff like that is going to push people away when there's important news out there. You know, they're just not going to be listening anymore. Some of that stuff is just a little over the top, but at the same time, you know, think about comedians are living their life right now. They have so much gold to talk about, and it's the best time, I think, for something like that. And I guess it's an opportunity you shouldn't put away. I personally don't support really any of the presidents that are coming up. Bernie was probably the closest to my liking, obviously.
Bernie, but, I would have voted for Bernie had he been.
Hillary was definitely.
Yeah.
Hillary was definitely something I wasn't interested in. So
I would have voted for her over Trump, but Hillary was. Bernie was who I was hoping was going to be president. But I agree with you. Your point about the ketchup on his steak. Yeah, ketchup probably doesn't belong on steak, but you know, if you want ketchup on steak, eat ketchup on steak. I have friends who put ketchup on fried chicken, and it's like, what? I used to know somebody, true story, who would put spaghetti on their pancakes. They would take spaghetti, and they liked it. It's what they did they had leftover spaghetti in the fridge. They kept it all ready for that, and then every single morning they would dump spaghetti on their pancakes. Yeah. That's nothing that disqualifies you from being president, though. I mean, it's, you know, not that it's not newsworthy. Yes, if they had a picture of Trump eating spaghetti on his pancakes, I would expect it to be on the news, you know, so it would deserve to be on the news. But not as a criticism, just as a, what are you putting on your pancakes?
Yeah.
I have a whole list here. You know, we still have about 20 minutes. I have a whole list here of things that are direct quotes from Trump, most from his own Twitter account, and none are just merely attributed to him by other people. So, sorry, losers and haters, but my IQ is one of the highest, and you all know it. Please don't feel so stupid or insecure. It's not your fault. Or then, my fingers are long and beautiful, and as it has been well documented, are various other parts of my body. That's so presidential, you know. Ariana Huffington is unattractive inside and out. I fully understand why her husband left her for another man. He made a good decision. What? The president of the United States? And it's in that it's all of these things to me cumulatively make him unsuitable for POTUS. Rosie O'Donnell.
He's essentially
a troll. Sorry, yeah, go for it.
Just saying, he's essentially a troll, and that's obviously something that most people aren't comfortable having. The president as. He's someone that just wants to pick at people and boost. I mean, obviously he's successful, so he's probably in a position where he likes to belittle people and feel good about himself a lot. So he does that at a kind of crazy extreme level, and it makes it. It's weird though, because I think he does it more for popularity than anything, probably. But he doesn't do it kind of right because he actually kind of gets more criticism out of it. I think he wants to be popular, but it's hard anyways in the system because you're trying to fight against two almost polar opposite sides on a lot of issues. So, but I think that's what he's a lot of the things he comes up with. He's going to attack Muslims and I didn't mean to say Muslims, Mexicans, and the border issue. I don't think for a second he believes that's a real big issue in his head. I think he does that because he knows that's a topic that's going to get a lot of those cowboys fired up. I think that's personally my opinion.
No, I agree with you.
Of course, I don't know what he believes, and especially on his issue on abortion stuff, I don't think the government should be regulating and punishing people and stuff on abortion. Yeah. So I certainly don't support legislation that is going to harm people. And I definitely think that there's times when abortion is certainly necessary. My biggest thing, I like to point out kind of certain things I see are sometimes hypocritical about it. And certain things about it that bother me that people approach. I haven't really talked too much about abortion. I've been kind of just thinking about it recently more or less. It's not something I didn't think about. I've always been essentially, I would call myself pro-choice, But now I'm kind of trying to think about it a little more. I wouldn't really say I'm definitely not pro. I can't. How am I not pro-choice? I like choice, but I don't, because it's a weird call. Choice of words and to kind of, obfuscate from what is really being shown. In a sense, like that kind of pisses me off because it's clear both sides are just trying to almost like virtue signal, in a sense, rather than having just an intelligent debate.
To use the terminology of the debate. And we might as well segue to abortion here. I guess I would have to refer to myself as pro-choice, but it's not a term that I think is accurate. I'm not pro-choice. I am pro-continued legality of abortion. But that's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
It's not a very convenient label. For me, the entire question is one of personhood. To me, it's actually the only relevant criteria or relevant criterion. That's a pretty big topic. I catch spiders and throw them outside. If I had to kill my cheeseburger, I wouldn't eat my wouldn't have. Well, I'm allergic to beef, so I don't eat cheeseburgers. But if I had to throttle the necks of chickens to have a chicken sandwich, I would be a vegetarian, right? I have held people's hands as they had abortions because they asked me to. But I would prefer not to kill anything. I'm anti-death penalty. I don't agree with the death penalty. And I think you pointed out sort of the hypocrisy, or at least the cognitive dissonance that should be occurring in people who somehow manage to support killing the postborn, you know, without any hesitation, and worrying about an embryo. I do believe that very possibly third trimester abortions should be illegal. But I think it's fairly ridiculous to argue that a blastocyst, an embryo, or a zygote in those very, very early stages of development, when you could slip on it in the sidewalk and not identify what it was, right? For me, it's sort of ridiculous to call those people pre-people. You know, I can't argue if that's true, that that's not true. So I would have a lot more sympathy for the anti-abortion argument if it was more reasonable. I have friends who initially just confirmed to me that they're opposed to abortion, but then at the end, they're opposed to not having babies. You know, I have lots of fundamentalist Christians and family who not only are opposed to abortion, they're opposed to contraceptive use. And I'm not referring just to contraceptive use as in the contraceptives that might be abortions, but are opposed to condoms, you know, because God said we're supposed to be fruitful and multiply, and anything that you do, including jerking off, is opposed to that. You know, that sperm should be able to make its way to up the fallopian tube and et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm not interested in a theological justification or exclusion for anything. So, anyway, that's my sense. Go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I definitely am on page with you on pretty much everything you said there. You know, I definitely don't agree with. At this point, it's just really important to say actually that it's similar to the drug war in my opinion, because people have been using drugs forever, and you're trying to come in and stop them through legislation. If that was to be the focus, especially after now, for what is it, 60 years or so since abortion went through the Supreme Court, and to kind of turn that around now, you're going to be fighting. You're going to be making people criminals. There's going to be a lot of people on the side who are doing criminal things just because it's a part of our society, and it has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. And to make something illegal that's done so often. I mean, abortions aren't done. You know, it's not like everyone's having an abortion, but they happen. You know, people have them. People make that decision, and they have it. I'm not necessarily against people having the choices and stuff too. I just think, you know, the best thing with abortion is for people to actually think about it, and I think. It's like the most hypocritical thing I think about the abortion debate is kind of that. I mean, I see the concept of it's something that needs to be debated, and it probably won't be agreed upon for who knows how long. But at one point, like you're saying, it's almost like a scientific question. You know, what point is does life begin? Is the point of contraception? Is it the point of, you know, a certain point in the development itself? And, you know, at what point is it okay to have the abortion? You know, how many weeks into the, like you're saying, I'm not exactly sure what the third trimester is, exactly how many weeks that is.
I think it's about the 24th week.
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't know entirely. I don't remember for sure.
And as far as I know, the law is kind of on that right now. You can't have an abortion after a certain number of weeks. Maybe it was like 30 weeks or 20-some weeks.
I think it maybe vary state to state. I'm not sure.
Right. Right.
I think
you have almost like where overnight you can go from illegal to legal and things like that. There's always going to be those you're throwing a law in there that's can't really bend necessarily with the changing times or just the fact that we're growing ourselves. So as it's you have that point where one day the baby's legal to kill, the next day it's not. But and you have the concept of being a baby. You think about it as a living creature that's going to become a baby the whole time, even before all the way through those first 20 weeks. That thing's a baby to you. You're going shopping for, thinking about it. You're telling everybody you're going to have a kid. You're thinking about it and stuff. And I think that's one of why it's so difficult for a lot of people, because it's especially women who I can imagine what it's like to carry a baby and have that. So it's got to be extremely difficult decision to make, and I think you're going to have to try to rationalize it some way, no matter how, because I don't think anyone's fully saying, oh, this is a good thing. It may work out in the best for that person's life, and it may have. Even though I think adoption is just usually going to be a better option. But the main thing is certain issues. If a woman's going to die, you may almost have to take certain precautions. Are you going to kill off the woman or let the woman die to save the baby? I mean, I had a friend who ended up losing her child, losing her life when she gave birth to a child. And in some cases that happens, but in some cases you may take the child's life to save the woman through complications. Or I don't think though, like personally, I don't think the whole the argument of about incest and rape, I don't think that's, when people bring that up, I think that's usually, I'm not sure what to call it, but I think it seems kind of fallacious to me. I just don't know how to.
I agree.
I haven't thought about it enough.
If it's murder, if that's the argument, and it is frequently, then it's murder, and not less murder because the baby, if we're going to call it that, was the consequence of a rape. It doesn't justify it. If I was opposed to abortion, or to the continued legality of abortion, the only way that I would be that I would be accepting of it would be to save the life of the mom. That's it. If I was opposed to it, it would be I would allow it only for that reason. Because my wife is more important to me. I've been married 36 years, so my wife is more important to me than, even though it would be a hideous, horrible decision to make, than the life of my prospective child. Maybe that's selfish, but it's what it is.
Well, there's always going to be those situations you can't fully control, and tough decisions like that. I mean, maybe not necessarily on whether you take something's life or not, but I personally, on the other spectrum, as you mentioned before, I eat meat and everything all the time, but personally, I have a desire. I'd rather live in the woods and hunt and do nothing but essentially eat meat, but I'd want to be a part of the actual taking, not because I desire killing anything, but because I don't desire the lifestyle where everyone doesn't really understand the concept that this meat comes from a living thing and not from a grocery store, not from just some, excuse me, not just from some piece of plastic wrapped up and that's how it's born that way, or it comes to the factory and it's just made that way. I think people should be, not only for the purpose of, it's good to have that knowledge, especially, that's our life. If we didn't have all these technological advances to separate it from us, that would be our life. Like every other living thing in the biological community of of the world. So I just think that's, for me, it's an important thing to be a part of, but it's not for the killing aspect, but I understand that's an important part. I know that every creature that's born to this community dies in this community, and it's basically its life is given as food for something else.
I agree. Yeah.
So So I see purposeful killing in a sense, if you want to call it that, something where it's almost like sacrificial, you know. So certain levels I can kind of support killing. I don't support the death penalty and stuff like that, capital punishment, not at all. But I think it's almost like there's other kind of crazy level of the argument with abortion that I don't really agree necessarily that. I'm not sure how to put it. Yeah, go ahead if you have something.
No, I was just. I agree with you as far as we have this separation. We walk into the butcher, we walk into the grocery store, and there's meat in white plastic containers. So I buy chicken breast from a chicken that somebody else has slaughtered and dressed, and you know, it's just there. I don't have any connection to a bird. You know, if I did, as I said before, if I had to wring the chicken's neck, I couldn't do it. So maybe everybody who eats meat, not that you could really require this, but should be required to slaughter a chicken, or anybody who eats beef should be required to at least go to the slaughterhouse and, you know, watch a calf have a bolt shot into its brain and disemboweled, etc., etc. And again, I'm not actually suggesting that, but ethically, you would probably have fewer omnivorous humans. Probably far more of it would decide that they were going to live their life as herbivores. So yeah, no, I agree with you there. So did you remember or formulate words for what you were going to say?
No, I'm not really exactly sure. I kind of left that and just focused on what you were saying.
Oh,
so.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure exactly what point I was getting at anymore, so sorry about that.
So,
but go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just mainly saying, you know, talking about abortion. Almost every aspect of abortion, I think it makes sense. Like, it's weird. I can see both arguments kind of, they make sense, but they're just not. They're not fully substantiated. Like, for example, the my body, my right kind of concept. I understand that argument, but at the same time, I see plenty of issues with it as well. Kind of, you know, the concept. Yep, you're right. The rights of your you know, someone else ends at the, you know, end of your fist, or, you know, when you impede on someone else's rights, you know, that's when your rights end. That whole concept is kind of the same thing, because once you have a baby in you, I mean, I guess it depends how we define it. If we don't define that as a living thing with rights, then I guess, you know, you can do whatever you want to it. But if you define it as a living thing with rights, you know, then obviously it comes down to, you know, even if it is essentially in your body, you don't have a right to harm that living thing that's rights in your body. You know, it's not that living thing inside you that in any way put itself in that position to have to rely on you. That was your choice that led you to that position, you know, in most cases. But it's why it's a hard argument. That's why it hasn't been settled. And actually, I think there's a lot of unreasonable people as well. But it generally actually is. There's a lot of, I see both sides, because it's emotional argument.
Oh, very emotional. You know? Yeah. You know, for me, it's inarguably a living thing. I've talked to people who, you know, biologists actually, who explained that in some sense an ovum wasn't living and that sperm wasn't living, but that after conception it was. And I'm okay with that. So I accept that, not being a biologist able to contradict it. But so for me, merely being a living thing isn't adequate as a preventative argument. So I mean, essentially, I'm talking about sentience and sapience, um, and maybe, well, not maybe, horrific pain. I see that we have 3, 2, 1.